Hello, everyone. It is me, Burrito. Welcome to the Homesickness Makeup Training. In this workshop, we are going to go over, it says here, some of the basics of homesickness and how we can help manage it at camp. This is probably one of the more important trainings just because homesickness is something that we deal with inevitably a lot. So the more prepared you are in knowing what to expect, kind of what homesickness might look like, your campers won't always come right out and say, I feel homesick. It might be some other behaviors that we can kind of see in our campers that might be letting us know that there's something else going on, and that something else a lot of times does end up being homesickness. So the more equipped you are to handle homesickness when it does come up at camp, and the quicker hopefully we're able to help our campers feel a little bit more at home and a little bit more comfortable while they're at camp, the better time everyone's going to have. And that's really our goal. We want our campers to have the best week possible, and hopefully that will include being able to get them feeling a little bit less homesick. So, another thing to note here is that hopefully at this point you've done your EOTs. I'm sure you noticed that this is a training that double dips. So there are EOT videos and quizzes on homesickness and this, custom specific training on homesickness. And again, this is just because we want you guys to feel like you really kind of have this down. As always at camp, you'll be working together with your co-counselors, so if you have questions, concerns, you can always go to them with anything. But the more prepared you are to deal with homesickness at camp, the better everything will go. Um, and again, just looking here, so you might have some, what if questions, potential scenarios that come to your head after going through this training. And again, since this isn't this is not in person, I can't directly answer your questions, but if you have anything that remains, like after you watch the video, taking the quiz, please reach out. As always, we're here to help you guys out and make sure that you feel good about everything that you've been prepared with and that you feel good going into camp. One other thing to note just before we get started is that, like I said, homesickness is one of the most prevalent things that you'll experience with your campers at camp, and sometimes even counselors get a little homesick, and that's totally okay because it's completely natural to experience some homesickness throughout your life. And because it affects so many different people, there isn't one single way that works with all of your campers. So again, I've kind of mentioned this throughout some of the other trainings, but just getting to know your campers on that personal level, what they're like, kind of the things they do and don't like, what matters to them will help you be able to better know how to serve them, how to get them feeling a little bit better. So with that, let's get started. So first, we're gonna together, you guys can follow along and take it if you want to, but we're gonna go take this little Kahoot quiz together, I guess, for this. Just pretend that you're me. I'll be taking it from my own perspective, and we'll kind of go through it together. And basically, this Kahoot, the questions will ask you about, like, your experience with some homesickness that maybe you've had in college, and again, like maybe after taking it, there might be some things that you find surprising about the results. And then we'll go over what might be similar to being homesick during college versus during camp. So going to the Kahoot, I'm going to play. Okay, so that's me. I'm the only player this round, but we're going to start. And then I'll walk through some of the questions with you guys. So first question, have you experienced homesickness in college? Yes. Or college yet? I'm going to say yes because I definitely have. I'm going to go next. If you have, what do you miss the most about home? My family, my pets, my friends, my own room. For me, probably my first year of college, it was more my friends, so I'm going to go with that. How often do you call home? I'm probably like once a week. About there. So, how have you dealt with homesickness? I said joining clubs, making new friends. And then the last question, as time goes on, are you getting less homesick? For me, yes. So, obviously I was the only one playing, but just based on that, you can see some of the questions that they asked. So now we'll go back to the workshop and go over again just what I asked earlier. So, what might be some of the similarities between being homesick during college and being homesick at camp? And, it's interesting because a lot of the questions that tap into what makes you homesick at college are really similar to some of the things our campers might experience at camp. Being away from family, maybe for the first time, being in a new place and not really being sure what to expect. And yeah, definitely, especially for our new campers, but we have a lot of returning campers that can get homesick too. So, homesickness might affect people in a lot of different ways. Everyone is unique, but it definitely does affect a lot of people, actually, majority. At some point in their life or in new experiences, will feel somewhat homesick. So, now we're going to go over what homesickness actually is. I'm sure you kind of all have your own ideas about what homesickness is. Maybe plenty of you have experienced it before, so just based on that experience, you have an idea about what it is. But just kind of thinking about it for yourself, would you consider it to be an expression of homesickness or some sort of homesick related behavior rather than actually like defining what it is? And that makes sense because homesickness itself is pretty hard to define since, like I said, everyone experiences it differently. So, according to our lovely, lovely Dr. Chris Thurber from our EOT videos, homesickness is distress or impairment caused by an actual or anticipated separation from home. Homesickness is characterized by acute longing and preoccupying thoughts of home and attached objects, parents, pets, friends. Different people miss different things about home, but really it is anything that is familiar, loved ones, pets, your bed, maybe you're in a different time zone or climate, so you miss it's like you grew up at the beach, now all of a sudden you're thrown into this area with a ton of snow. Maybe you miss being out in the warm sun and by the water. So yeah, this kind of gives us a nice working definition for homesickness, since it is kind of hard to define as one specific thing. So moving on, we're now going to go over some of the facts and myths that are related to homesickness, and then I'll kind of explain why it might be a fact versus a myth. So, our first little tidbit in the facts or myths category about homesickness is that homesickness only occurs in our youngest campers, and this is a myth. Homesickness happens universally to all ages throughout adulthood. But why is this a myth? You think about homesickness typically affecting younger people. Why is that a myth? And this is because we usually only look for behavior or expressions in our young campers, since that's kind of what we're expecting. We don't expect older kids and adults to suffer from homesick feelings. And because of that, we often misinterpret what their behavior is saying. So maybe you have an older camper that is just not wanting to participate. You might attribute this to maybe just like teenage angst or something like that, as opposed to homesickness, when in reality, they might be feeling homesick and might need someone to talk to about it. The next is that more than 95% of campers report some feelings of homesickness during their stay at camp. This is a fact. Homesickness is completely normal, and it really will affect the majority of campers, and sometimes even counselors, sometimes even us, will feel homesick at some point during our stay at camp. The next is that symptoms of homesickness always include some sort of severe depression or anxiety. This is also a myth. Only about 7% of campers report these feelings along with their homesickness. However, it doesn't mean that it's something that we shouldn't keep our eye out for. Symptoms of homesickness can include depression, anxiety, withdrawn behavior, embarrassment, even denial about feeling homesick, somatic complaints, which are infrequent. This could be like a headache or stomach ache. Stomach ache is a big one that we see. And acting out behaviors, which again might be kind of more on the rare side. However, most feelings of homesickness go undetected and therefore unprocessed, and not all homesick children actually look homesick. So it's important for us to kind of broaden our own ideas about what homesickness is, just so we can keep our eye out for it if it does come up at camp, which in most situations it will for some of you guys. So the next is that the most severe cases of homesickness happen in the first few days. This one is also a myth. Research actually shows that campers that struggle with homesickness and don't get help will show an increase in their feelings of either anxiety, depression, whatever other symptoms they might be experiencing until going home is imminent, meaning maybe the next day or so. So why do we think that homesickness only happens in the first few days? This is usually because when we do catch it, this is because this first few days is typically when we do catch it or do see it or maybe expect to see it. But this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be on the lookout throughout the rest of camp. Some campers will get homesick later on, or feelings might escalate as time goes on, feelings that you may have not detected earlier on in camp. The next is that children are more likely to get homesick if they have little previous separation experience and have no previous experience at your camp. This is a fact. Why? And this kind of just ties back to what we were saying earlier. Some campers have experience, knowledge, membership, that way when they return, they already have that comfort and stability. But if it's a camper's first time at our camp or a camper's first time being away from home at all, that can be pretty nerve-wracking and can increase feelings of homesickness. Next is that children are less likely to get homesick if they perceive low control over their own emotions, are anxious or depressed in the months before camp, and are insecurely attached, i.e. they are unsure whether their caregivers will give them love when they need it. This is a myth. Why is it a myth? This is just because if they have other issues going on in their lives or personally, it is easier to slip into feelings of homesickness. Next is that children are more likely to get homesick if they feel forced to come to camp, if their parents express doubt or anxiety about their going to camp, or if there is something about their home situation that makes them worried, such as upcoming move or divorce. For us, this could be just the fact that their parent is sick and they're not sure what's going to happen. So why is this important, and what can you do about it? Nothing, but it gives you reason to ask. If you you guys will get binders right before camp that show you all of your campers' situations, a little bit about their background, just so you know who they kind of are going into camp. So if you know that maybe you have a camper that's new to Camp Custom, maybe they're in a situation like this, you might be kind of want to be on the lookout for homesickness in your camper. Again, it's no guarantee that they will be homesick, but it could happen. And it's better to be prepared than not be prepared. And then finally, children are more likely to get homesick if they have low expectations of camp, believe their homesickness will be strong, and have a negative first impression of camp. This is a fact. So what does this mean for your work? This means that, expectations and first impressions are really important. This means that we want to make sure that we are giving our campers the best experience possible, that they're having so much fun at camp, making sure that you're being very warm, welcoming, giving them some sort of homely vibe when they first get to camp. This is all going to be really important. It's kind of setting up their success for later on in camp. They still might be homesick, but at least this way it can help to decrease the likelihood of that happening and help to increase the chance that you can help them out of it if you establish that connection with the camper early on. So, again, since homesickness affects a wide variety of different people, it's natural that it's going to be expressed differently by different campers. But there kind of are a few trends that we typically see in our homesick campers and how they express their behavior. And kind of informing yourself of this before you go to camp can be helpful in figuring out what to do, what to look for when we are at camp. So the first kind of situation that you might experience is the angry homesick camper. This could kind of come into fruition and represent itself in frustration aimed at you or at other campers or counselors, thinking that everything is stupid or won't be fun, intentionally being disruptive or disobeying rules, thinking that everyone is against them or out to get them. Typically, if a camper has a hard time fitting in at first, maybe can amplify feelings of homesickness. And, home is a place where hopefully they do kind of fit in and feel like they have a place. So it can kind of make campers feel like they don't really have anyone on their side. And then again, overabundance of rules can increase the problem. Just walked through the communication workshop with you guys where we talked about kind of an appropriate way to frame rules, make it fun for campers, make them seem like they're in control and they kind of have some say in the way things go at camp. So making sure that you're being careful about how you're framing rules for campers that might be homesick in particular. And again, just making sure that they know that you're there for them, that you're like, what can I do to help you make you feel less upset about whatever's going on. The next situation you might run into is the bored homesick camper. This is generally only found in the first days of camp. Everyone's diving into all these super fun activities. So if you right off the bat you have a camper that's not really participating, you might notice it more so rather than later on when everyone's more comfortable with each other. People tend to just be very willing to hop in on activities. This could show up as a camper being withdrawn from the cabin and from other people, typically being alone, being off to the side. I mean, a lot of times this is a first-time camper that doesn't already have those friendships established at camp, so they don't really have something to kind of come and just jump right into. One important thing to note about your bored homesick campers is that activity drastically improves mood. So even if you can't help completely get rid of the homesickness, what you can do is try to find some way to gauge their interest, help them feel like, okay, this is an activity that I would want to do. Or maybe say, if you don't like this activity, we have this to look forward to later. So maybe if you want to come do this one with me now just to pass the time, we can go have a lot of fun with whatever we have going on later in the day. And this is important because activity, like I said, activity improves mood. So the more engaged you can get your campers, the more active and participating you can get them, the more likely they are to either at least forget about their homesickness or maybe even decrease feelings of homesickness. And then finally is the sad homesick camper. I know that me personally, when I've experienced homesickness, I tend to have this kind of sad, not really looking forward to things behavior. So definitely, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but definitely have a lot of campers that have too. These campers are generally missing home and parents, siblings, pets, friends, maybe even teachers that are associated with being at home. They don't really put forth the effort to get to know others. They're very quiet because they're typically kind of internalizing their feelings, thinking about home. And they might be asking to call home for no particular reason. And lastly, they're generally really good kids who follow rules. They won't lash out. They're not rule breakers. They're friendly. They're just not really putting themselves out there because they're so kind of concerned about their feelings of missing home. So, again, there are other ways that your campers will express their homesickness in their behavior, but these are three kind of staple situations to really be on the lookout for, especially early on at camp, but again, all throughout camp as well. So what can we do about campers that are homesick? There are a lot of different options. Again, there's not really one correct way to react to a homesick camper, just because everyone experiences it differently and everyone reacts to it differently. But there are two things that we can do to work with homesickness and try to improve it. The first are preventative strategies. This is something that we can do right off the bat when everyone gets to camp to help prevent homesickness. And then the next is intervention. So if you have a camper that has homesickness, what can you do to help that camper manage the feelings when they do happen? Help them to decrease those feelings of homesickness or find ways to distract them. That way they're still able to have fun at camp and not be so heavily preoccupied by their feelings of homesickness. So again, since this is not so interactive, we're not going to do the whole break into groups. But we are going to kind of go through both of these preventative strategies and intervention strategies, and brainstorm different techniques that we can use with these different strategies to help decrease homesickness. So let's say that you are focusing on preventative strategies or prevention. Maybe think about, what are some ways to help kids adapt quickly to the routine and the environment? Maybe what are some ways to keep everyone active and involved? Or even ways to integrate kids immediately into groups. These are 3 ways right off the bat, right when you get to camp. If you can jump right in, kind of be very friendly, introduce kids to other campers. Sometimes it's helpful to pair up new campers with returning campers that have been through it. They know the experience is like. And play games. We had kind of right when we all get to camp, we have campers filter in throughout the first portion of the afternoon before we kind of get going with all of our camp-wide activities. So while people are filtering in, don't just kind of let them sit there, especially maybe they're new and nervous about being away from their parents. Start games, get things going to make them feel like they're really part of the group. So I'll come back to this in a second, but now we're going to go down to look at some of these preventative strategies that we might be able to utilize to help make sure that campers feel less homesick or don't feel homesick during camp. So one thing to do is help kids adapt to camp environment and routine, like we said. So don't ignore kids that have been to camp before. I know I said maybe keep an eye out, especially for new campers that might seem particularly nervous or apprehensive about being there. But we've definitely had campers before that, they've been to camp plenty of times before. Maybe in those previous years, they have experienced homesickness regularly. Maybe for some reason, some underlying reason, they are for the first time experiencing homesickness. It's important to make sure that we're including everyone and making sure everyone is feeling like they're really part of the group right off the bat. Next, it's good to review the schedule and let campers know what's next, and remind campers of cool activities in the future. If you are always setting campers up to be excited about what to expect, like always thinking about what's next, what are all the cool things you get to do while you're at camp, it's going to keep their minds kind of engaged and not really giving them the time to focus on missing home. There's so many cool things that we do and so many fun things that are always going on. So this is a great way to keep kids really focused on that. Another one is tell kids to look out for each other. This is kind of what I was referring to earlier with the whole pairing up of returning kids and new kids. Everyone is prone to homesickness differently, and again, everyone expresses homesickness differently. So if you really emphasize the fact that, hey, like we're like a big family here, we want to make sure everyone's having fun and always feeling like they're having a good time. Obviously, it's okay for kids to have off days, but just really reinforcing that right off the bat, telling kids, if you feel like someone's sad, you can come tell me, like, as your counselor, and I can help, or maybe even go talk to them, see if they want to do something fun with you. Again, stay active and involved. This kind of runs throughout all of this. And this is on your part too. So not just making sure that the kids are doing their own thing, having fun, but really yourself being a part of that at all times. Again, this kind of stems from that, but paying attention to all of the kids, getting to know everyone on an individual basis. Don't see them just as your group of campers, but see them as, all your little friends that you want to get to know better and really spend time with. Get them involved in activities. Don't let them sit out of activities. This is a big one. The more they sit out, the more they'll dwell on their feelings of homesickness. Or maybe, again, since it's a prevention strategy, if they don't feel homesick yet, it might give them the opportunity to. So do your best to make sure everyone is really engaged. Sometimes you're going to have campers that just really, really don't want to do it. We can't force anyone to do anything. But maybe if you have a couple campers together that just aren't really showing interest in activity, have one of your co-counselors go hang out with them off to the side and do something else while we're at that specific rotation. Again, try your best not to let that happen, but think of alternatives if it does need to happen, so that way you don't have like one camper or a couple campers just sitting alone off to the side. Play these icebreaker get-to-know-you games with the cabin. This helps to facilitate bonds, and this is also really helpful for clique formation. So A lot of times what might happen is that you have a cabin with a bunch of returning campers that already have this really, really great friendship, and we obviously want to encourage that as much as possible, but you might have a new camper or so that don't really know anyone yet and are having a hard time kind of feeling like they're part of that group. So right off the bat, playing these get to know you games can help make that camper or two feel like they're really, really part of the group. Be sincere. Campers can tell when you truly care about them. This goes back to our communication training. Just make sure that you're really, really expressing that you want them to have fun, you really care about them, you support them, and you're always there for them. Let campers know that, again, you will be there for them. However, don't make promises that you can't keep. If you haven't already been through the training, we do go over situations where this is in your expert online trainings as well, but sometimes campers disclose things to us that if it indicates any harm to them or to another person, we are a mandatory reporting group, so we do need to tell someone. So if a camper comes up to you and says, hey, I have a secret, will you keep it? Or can I tell you? Just say, I'm here for you. I want you to trust me and be someone that you feel like you can talk to with anything. If I am concerned about your well-being or something like that, then I can't promise that I can keep a secret, but I'll do my best to ensure that the information you tell me stays only between a few people, because I just want to make sure that you're okay. Something along those lines. Another important thing is to orient and welcome. Orienting your campers begins before camp starts with a phone call, a camp brochure DVD, or other materials detailing daily camp life. We've sent out packets with our tickets all aboard the CK. That's our C theme for camp this year. So especially for new campers, that's helpful for orienting them. But again, since you'll get these binders before camp, memorize all your campers' names. Associate their names with their faces if you can. This helps make them feel welcome and, at home. Again, being away from home is hard, and since we are a big family at Camp Custom, the more we can kind of foster that family, homely feeling, the better off we're setting up our campers. And then again, maybe help them customize their bunk with a name card, maintain close contact during the first day or so. You are their substitute parent. You aren't their parent, but you're acting in that role model position while we're at camp. So anything you can to really look out for all of your campers, make sure that they're having an okay time. And then finally, integrate. So immediately integrating your campers into camp gives them a good first impression of camp, gets them super, super excited, and again, kind of like we talked about before, it gives them a sense of control over what's going on. It's uncomfortable to be clueless for very long, so, introduce campers to each other, make sure schedules and maps are posted in visible locations. Again, like we were saying, keep telling kids, reminding kids what's coming up next in the schedule. These are all great ways to really help a camper feel like they have some control over what's happening, especially if they're nervous about being at camp or are maybe prone to feeling homesick. Okay, so next, going back up to intervention. So these are some techniques that we might want to put into practice with intervention. So one big one is promoting a connection with home. Another one is developing a schedule and calendar of the time remaining at camp. And another one is, maybe some short-term goal setting to create successful experiences. And again, this is if you have a camper that is already showing signs of homesickness. Maybe you've had a conversation or two with them and they have expressed that they're feeling pretty homesick. These are good ways to kind of help them get out of that initial rut and equip them with good coping skills. That way they know how to handle these emotions if they come up again later on in camp, and know that you're there for them too if they need to talk about anything. So going down to some more of our specific intervention strategies. One is try and give every camper special attention. Again, we are one big group, one big family, but if you're really taking the time and showing the effort that you care and really want to be there for every individual camper, it's going to help. If they were feeling lonely or feeling homesick, it's going to help them feel validated and feel like they're important. And then next, following from that, when you are giving this special attention, really acknowledge and validate campers' feelings. Never, ever, 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 ever dismiss their feelings. I've said this a couple times before. I'll say it again. We are an inclusive environment, and we never, ever want any of our campers to feel like they don't have a place simply because we didn't validate what they were saying or we made them feel like their feelings were important. Um, Homesickness is really hard, especially when maybe, you're experiencing it for the first time and you don't really know what it is or how to cope with it. So it's important that we're really validating everyone's experiences. Don't ignore physical complaints, even if you think that they are homesick related. So a lot of times, like I said before, we will have campers that complain of stomach aches. Yeah, it might be homesickness, but you also never know. Maybe they could have eaten something bad, or maybe have a little stomach bug. Um, Either way, maybe take them to the nurse and maybe sit in there with them for a while. We have amazing, amazing nurses. They are some of the kindest, sweetest human beings I've ever met. So just going to them, having a conversation with them. Obviously, we're adults and we're role models, but they're adults too, and they might know better how to step in and help us out. This is the same thing with our mental health professional. Taking a trip to see her can be really, really helpful. Also, if things get more, I'll get into this later, but obviously if things get more serious, she can be a good person to talk to as well for some help about how to deal with homesick kids. Another thing is always let your supervisors and directors know when you have a homesick camper. Again, this is not like because you're getting in trouble. No, it's never anyone's fault for having a homesick camper. But if more people know about it, the more people can be on the lookout for it and can try to help intervene and make that camper feel more at home. Another thing to remember is that kids are always listening and always watching. So find a private space to talk to other staff members about issues with campers. We are with the kids nearly 24/7, minus your short 1 hour break that you get every day. So you want to be careful, save these conversations for when you are on your break and can find other staff members, just you two, or when we have our counselor meetings at night. If it is a really dire situation that you feel like needs to be addressed directly, whether it's with homesickness or something else, you could potentially, as long as you guys stay in ratio, ask your co-counselors to kind of watch over your campers. Maybe you're at a big activity and you feel like it's a good time to take a quick break, step away, find someone to talk to, but never have these conversations in front of other kids. We want to respect everyone's privacy as much as possible and make sure that kids are not finding out about things that they don't need to find out about. Another big one is do not tell campers they can call home without administrative permission. It will make the homesickness 10 times worse. This is true. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive. Maybe you think having a conversation with a parent, might help them feel a little bit calm. But it actually can kind of enhance that feeling of detachment from home. We want to make sure that we can help to solve the problem as much as possible without making that call, because the minute they hear that parent's voice, the minute they're going to want to go home, that much worse. So again, don't make calls to parents. There are special occasions where if you have done everything you absolutely can, you can talk to the admin team and they will make the final call about whether it's good to make the call home or not. But don't ever tell a camper that they can call home unless you've had special permission to do so. Another thing is take special note in the interests of homesick campers. One of the most helpful ways to help get rid of homesickness is to kind of use these interests to your benefits and either spark a conversation about it, or maybe if it's some sort of activity, try to fit that activity into your routine during each day. So let's say you have a camper that really, really likes dancing. Maybe during transitions to and from each activity, you can play some music and everyone have like a short dance party, or at the talent show, we have a talent show at camp every year. Tell your camper that, hey, I don't know if you'd be interested in this. We have a talent show coming up, and I think you should definitely go up there and dance. Show us some of what you got from home. It kind of, by bringing those interests to camp, it kind of brings a little piece of home, something that they really are passionate about, and that reminds them of home a little bit, to the camp experience. Again, I've emphasized this before, but your fellow staff are your best resource. So let them know about your homesick camper, again, at an appropriate time. Encourage them to be extra sensitive to that camper without compromising the other campers. Again, we want to make sure that we're paying enough attention, enough individual attention to all of our campers, but just to be really careful about that one particular camper. Try not to do or say things that's going to increase homesickness, but again, just really, really engaging with them and checking in with them, seeing if they're doing okay without bringing up homesickness too much. Take special care to pay attention to how the camper is treated by the cabin. And if you sense any bullying or teasing or snarky talking or any talking behind backs, do not let this persist. Camp in general is a no bullying zone, and you should really, really step in immediately if you sense it, whether it's in relation to homesickness or not. But particularly if you have a camper that is homesick, if you sense that there's any teasing, it's just going to make them feel that much more ostracized and that much less at home. These kids are loved and cared for at home. So if they're not getting that same sense at camp, it's just going to make them want to go home that much more. Another big one is to provide social support. Homesick kids are very lonely, and it's really hard to go through homesickness, particularly when you're lonely. So always normalize their experience, empathize with their feelings. It's okay to say, hey, I'm a little homesick too, or say, hey, I've been homesick before. It's not hard. So again, don't let a camper that's homesick monopolize your time, but really show that you care. It's so important for them to feel validated and for them to feel like they're really supported in their experiences. So maybe a good way to go about doing this would be to set time limits at the start of your check-ins. Encourage homesick campers to get involved in all aspects of camp life. This is activities, cabin chat, meals with their co-campers, whatever it is, just encouraging them, song circle, all the fun things. And again, try pairing them with a veteran who can also provide social support. This is helpful to do, like I said, at the beginning of camp, but also if you notice homesickness later on in camp, doing that pairing up then can be helpful. Another good thing is to assess coping skills. Learn how your homesick campers are coping by asking them, tell me all the things you think or do to help make things better when you're feeling homesick. This can kind of give you some information as to how they cope or their method of coping. With coping, you don't want it to just be an seemingly endless period. You want the coping to help so they can actually at some point kind of get out of the rut of homesickness. So you want to assess their coping goals. You could ask, what did you hope might happen when you did this? Or what would be like the best thing that could happen to you while you're at camp? Questions like this can help you gauge whether their coping skills are actually helpful. And it's best that they are coping in adaptive and realistic ways. It's important to remember that if the behavior that they're doing to cope is maladaptive or somehow dysfunctional, maybe think about the opposite or suggest something else to be more helpful. Really work with them towards developing some sort of situation or some sort of activity, whatever it is, to ensure that their coping method is actually going to be really helpful. And then, if you find that their coping strategies are not really benefiting them that much, you can help them develop new ones. And again, there are a lot here. Like I said, there's really no one particular way to go about helping a camper get out of homesickness, but there are so many options that you can try. And once you figure out what works for your own campers, definitely use those to your benefit. It will make their experience so much better at camp. But some are, encouraging campers to socialize, help facilitate friendships and interactions, have a group discussion as to what it feels like normally when you leave home or when you're in a new place, and let them know that what they're feeling is really common. Don't make fun of their emotions, but, acknowledge that you're remembering here that the majority of campers at some point at camp will feel homesick. So validating them, normalizing what they're feeling is important. Relating personal experiences with being homesick and how you made it through. Again, you guys are role models. You guys are leaders here at camp, and your campers will love and adore and 100% look up to you. So if they've realized that you've been homesick before too, maybe you're homesick now, they think, wow, I look up to this person, and I'm homesick too, and I can maybe use what they did to help make it through. It'll give them validation, but it'll also kind of give them some hope for getting out of being homesick. Promote a connection with home. A good strategy to use here would be to write a letter to home or make time during the day for everyone to write. That way the camper doesn't feel like they're being singled out. Make it a big cabin-wide activity. You can give your campers the return address for camp so they get a letter back. This is a great way to have that contact with home and feel a little bit better about being away. Sometimes campers, if they feel like they can just somehow be in contact, might feel a little bit less homesick at the end of the day. And this is good because it is a way to have that connection without making that call that can actually make them more homesick that we talked about. Again, getting campers involved in exciting and fun activities, making the camper the quote-unquote expert in the group. So finding some sort of activity or talent that they're really good at and can maybe lead and teach the rest of the campers in the cabin. This gives them, a really, really great position and like feeling of belonging in the group. You can make a deal with a camper that if they will make an effort to go for the next day or two without incident, that you will meet with them and your supervisor again to discuss further options. This is good especially for campers that are really, really struggling with homesickness because it gives them a chance to get involved with the incentive that if they still want to leave later that day, they can have another meeting with you and someone else. Again, never promise a phone call or never promise that they'll get to go home, but it'll help them at least for the time being, kind of on a day-by-day basis, maybe have a little bit more fun at camp than if they're just dwelling on missing home the entire time. Again, encourage and follow up. So always, always encourage, but one good way to prevent rumination is to keep most of your conversations to a 15-minute maximum. So show faith in them. Say, I'm certain that if you keep trying hard, you'll be less homesick by this time tomorrow. Let's check in. This is similar to this strategy because if they feel like, they have some sort of check-in to look forward to, not only do they think, wow, okay, they're still going to be there for me. I can still talk to them if I need to, but it helps them take their mind off of it for the time being and, again, helps them to stay busy. Again, staying busy is one of the things that helps most kids feel better. Don't forget the follow-up meeting because, again, as part of our leadership training, you as a reliable leader, you always want to be available and don't forget about it, but making sure that they're staying engaged, right, for the time being. Again, good ways for this coping part is to analyze coping. So we talked about this before, but ask yourself, is the camper coping by trying to change something that can't be changed? This is the dead end, and we want to help them reevaluate coping skills. Have they given up completely? Do they think nothing will help? And the best way to cope is to adjust things that you can't change, such as length of a session, and change what you can. So it works. It takes time, dedication to feel better, and your help. So the important thing is that you're always there for your campers, but don't give them hope that they can change something that they can't. Make sure that they're thinking about activities that they will actually be able to do. And then finally, teach better coping skills if a camper is struggling with coping. This is coming from kids personally, but they think that doing something fun to forget about being homesick, doing something like we talked about, writing a letter to feel closer to home, talking with someone to help them feel better. If a camper is feeling homesick and they see that another camper is feeling homesick, maybe even just giving them advice and talking to them can help them feel better because it'll help them realize, wow, I can do these things too. Talking about the positive side of all things, rather than activities that they might not want to be doing. Think about, okay, well, what are some of the friends that you've made so far? What are some of the fun activities that you've done that you've enjoyed or that you might be looking forward to? Thinking that camp is pretty short to make time go by faster. So we really are only there for not even a full week. It's about 6 days total. So reminding a camper, let's say you're on day 3 and they're feeling homesick, say, hey, you're halfway there and then you get to go home. How exciting is that? Let's make the most of our time here since we're all going to miss each other when we go. That way when you go home, you'll have all these fun memories to look back on. Try not to think about home and loved ones, to forget about homesickness. This works for some campers. Again, sometimes that having that connection is helpful, but you don't want them to dwell too much about thinking about home and missing loved ones, because that can actually kind of, similar to the phone call home, can actually make homesickness worse. And then again, thinking about loved ones, having that connection to figure out what they might say to help. However, it's important to remember that wishful thinking, giving up, getting mad, running away, none of these things are things that work. If you can find ways to cope and address the situation at hand rather than just trying to push it under the rug, not validate your camper's feelings, it's really better to work with these coping strategies rather than go about these tactics here. Okay, so another thing that we can think about for treating homesickness is the Homesickness Club. So just as an example, one way to kind of still validate campers' feelings about homesickness while still, making them feel like they're part of the group and not dwelling on homesickness too much is to form like a secret society. If a camper is feeling homesick, tell them that they can join in on the Homesickness Club, but it's a secret, so they can't talk about it. And again, this is great because, it's giving them a place they feel like they can connect to. They're feeling sad and they miss home and they miss their parents. They just want to be back. But it's helping them feel like they're part of something while they're at camp. And again, since it's a secret, they can't talk about it too much, which will help them not dwell on it. So basically, each member will have a string tied to their shoe. If they see another camper with a string tied to their shoe, then they know they're part of the club too. And this is also great because then they know that they're not the only ones feeling homesick. Counselors can wear them too. Again, this is a great way to help them feel less alone, help them feel like they have a part in our big social group at camp, and help them acknowledge their feelings of homesickness, but be able to cope. Say, hey, I'm not alone. I really have a place here. I miss home, but I'm excited to be here. So just as a quick closing here, and I'll briefly go over these before we finish up, but want to touch base on this first. Think about one of the last questions that we had on that initial quiz. Has homesickness gotten better with time? So for most campers, homesickness begins to get better as camp goes on. It won't for all campers, which is why it's important that we're on the lookout for it. That way, if we do see it, we can step in. We can try to help make it get better if it doesn't get better naturally. So try your best to find ways that will make a homesick camper feel included. And for most, you really will see homesickness improve, which is the best feeling ever. It's very, very rewarding. So here are some scenarios that you might run into. Since they're kind of long, I'm not going to go super in depth, but I will briefly go over each of these just because you guys are all going to be working with different age groups. Homesickness is going to come up in various ways and shapes and forms, so it's important that you're all equipped. Again, this is a very important training. All of our trainings mean a lot, but this is one that's very, very applicable. So with some of your older teens, we talked about this situation maybe coming up, but you might have a new camper when the rest are returners. Maybe she's having a hard time fitting in, despite efforts from other campers to include her. Maybe at first she doesn't want to participate or engage in any of the games or activities, and she takes a too cool attitude. So when she does participate, she's overly critical of everyone else and makes fun of them. And after a couple of talks with her, getting to know her, you realize that this is coming from being homesick. So first, address that bullying and making fun of others is not an acceptable way to express one's feelings. Then you can validate the camper's feelings and help them think of better ways to express those feelings, like asking for what they need, maybe writing a letter to home. What else do you like to do to help make you feel less homesick? Ask what activities she's interested in and let her be a leader in those activities. Ask what would be helpful to her. Since she is older, she's in the teens group, she is kind of more in tune with herself and will better understand things that can help her rather than not knowing as well, like a younger camper might. And then finally, follow up. make sure that she's okay. Keep checking in over time. So next is another teen situation. A lot of times this will come into like the not caring attitude. This is what you might see with your teens. So they might complain that everything at camp sucks. It's for little kids. Don't want to be there. Won't try to participate even when the others are engaged and having fun. He's a leader in your group, and his attitude is taking a lot of others in your groups down. This can be really hard, especially with teens tending to group off. And having behaviors of one person influence behaviors of the others. Sometimes he'll intentionally disregard the rules or your instructions, and you've tried to talk with him a couple of times, but each time he gets really defensive and sad. So if things have escalated to this level, if you've already tried to kind of make that connection, it's just not working, this is what our MHP is for. Our camp advisors are helpful too. We have a wonderful MHP, Mama Bear. If you have not met her yet, just wait. She's absolutely wonderful. And she can definitely help out with this situation. So you could say, I've noticed that you don't seem to be enjoying camp too much this year. Can I ask what is making it not fun for you? And personally, I added onto this. I'm wondering because I want to be able to make sure that you're having the most fun experience possible and make sure that you feel like you have a place or something like that. That way you're validating his feelings. Shifting the conversation to what you personally could do to help make their experience better. And then based on how they respond, just take it from there. If they say, a certain activity is something I'd like to do, since he's naturally a leader already, make him a leader of that activity. Turn his current role and his current place in your cabinet camp into something positive. For tweens and young teens group, maybe you have a camper that's never been away from home before. She really misses home and her parents, but again, since you're in this young teenager, really, really tough age, maybe she's embarrassed to say anything in front of the other campers. Maybe she feels like she's alone in her homesickness. Sometimes she seems engaged, but she's very quiet and isn't making any connections with other campers, which can be really hard and making her feel lonely. For this, you could tell her about the secret homesick club. Do some more icebreakers, group bonding activities, elicit more connection between her and the other campers. Again, checking in and following up regularly, big move. You could let her write a letter to home to encourage her to highlight what she likes about camp, anything new that she's tried. And by focusing on this, it's going to help her reflect on the really great things that she's experienced so far. And by focusing on that rather than on the negative, it's really, really going to help her experience be better off from there on out. Maybe you have a camper in the 10 to 12-year-old group. One of your campers seems to be in his own little world. He's withdrawn, doesn't participate. He gets pretty agitated and upset at meal times. This is the second night of camp, and he's starting to get really upset and sad when it's bedtime. Bedtime is a pretty big time that you might see homesickness, typically because kids are used to their parents checking them in. They're so busy with other activities throughout the day that when it gets to bed and things tend to wind down, they have more time to focus on their homesick feelings. So you could be straightforward and tell the camper you noticed that these seem to be tricky times for him. Ask if there's something that you all can do to make those times easier. Again, emphasizing that you're there for him and you want to make sure that, he's going to be feeling better at the end of the day. You could have the camper make a list of what they're looking forward to tomorrow before bed. That way, again, similar to the letter writing, focusing on the positive things that we talked about for the preteen group. That way, going to bed, he's focusing on the exciting things that are coming forward in the next day. And we'll go to bed feeling a little bit better rather than focusing just on being homesick. And again, you can pair up campers, have them learn about one another through a get-to-know-you game so that the camper has a buddy throughout the rest of camp. Again, facilitating that sort of social connection can really, really help with homesickness. Maybe you are working with the 9 to 10-year-olds. One of your campers is really sad, has been since he arrived. He had a really, really hard time leaving his parents, often breaks down crying during transitions and when the group is not engaged. So, when they're not busy in some sort of activity and he's reminded of being homesick, that can be really hard for him. Maybe your other campers have noticed that he's getting more attention, and because of this, 3 more kids have started to act homesick. Maybe this is because they genuinely are acting homesick, or they not acting, maybe they are feeling homesick, or maybe it's because they notice that he's getting more attention, and this might be a way for them to get similar attention. So one thing you could do is to have a group discussion about homesickness. Again, normalizing it, saying that it happens to a lot of people and it's totally okay to have these feelings. But what are some activities that you guys are looking forward to, or what are some things that you think we can do as a group to help make you guys feel a little bit better? Again, our MHP camp advisors will be there for support, ideas. You can talk to all campers about their own coping skills, remind them about coping skills throughout the day, figure out better ways for these individuals to be coping if they really are experiencing hard homesick feelings. And then again, the initial camper that was having homesickness, you could have him draw or write to his caregivers, tell him about camp, again focusing on some of the positive aspects. And then finally, you're with the young kids, 7 and 9-year-olds. Maybe one of your campers is very, very homesick. She's okay. The counselor is always with her, engaged one-on-one, but still kind of teeters on the edge, especially when a counselor is not there with her all the time. She's just with the other campers, starts to, really get upset. Every couple of hours, she insists on going to the nurse because she feels sick, and it's starting to be a real drain on the unit staff. This is tricky because, camp is hard enough managing all of these kids, but if you have one camper that, is constantly needing to go to the nurse or constantly needing this one-on-one attention, it can be that much more draining. So, again, you guys have these resources. You have us, you have whoever, your co-counselors. Always help, or always ask for help, or ask questions you might have that you think others can help you out with. We're a big team and we're a big family and we're always there for each other. So MHP, camp advisor, you can ask them for strategies and extra help so that way, your co-counselors and then yourself included too won't get burnt out. You can rotate which counselor is with the child so no one person is getting isolated. This is good to make sure that you're establishing connections between all of your campers and all of your counselors to have that really cohesive unit feeling. But, it's also good, too, to ensure that your one counselor isn't getting so drained that it's becoming really taxing to their camp experience. And then finally, you can help the camper come up with some coping skills. You could focus on reminding her of those to empower her to rely on herself more than her counselors. Again, be careful to frame this in a very positive way. Don't ever make the camper feel bad for feeling homesick. Validate their experience. Don't make the camper feel bad for, needing that counselor time, but make sure that you're doing everything you can to elevate her. We want to make sure that we can help them get out of their homesick feelings. So, I know that was a lot. I know my voice is tired. I know your ears are probably tired of my voice, so thank you guys for sitting through that pretty dense training. Since it was a lot, if you have any more questions, reach out. As always, we're here for you guys all the time. We want to make sure that you feel good about the trainings, that you're having a good experience, and that you're excited for camp and you feel prepared for camp too. So you'll have these handouts. They were in the document here, but they have them separately up here too. We'll put in a folder for you guys to refer to if you need them. Other than that, don't forget to take the homesickness workshop quiz when you're done with this video. I will see you guys soon. Love you all. Bye.